So they're praying over dinner. They say...
Cat. Thank you, Cat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Book Retorts. I'm Danielle.
I'm Sam.
And this is the podcast where one of us explains a weird piece of media to the other who has no experience with it.
That's me, Danielle. I'm inexperienced, like a brand new phone you just bought. You have to move all the bloatware off of it. That's me.
Oh, yeah. So shiny and new and fast.
Until you get your hands on it, and then after a few weeks, you're like, no, this was a mistake.
And then it's not shiny, new, nor fast.
That's me.
Yes. But, Sam, you do have a little bit of experience. You maybe have a couple of, old apps on there still.
Uh-oh. Is this? Are you continuing the metaphor for what you're bringing me today, or are we just beating a dead horse?
I am telling you what I'm bringing you today, which is, are you ready for this, Sam? Are you ready?
I'm probably not, but here we are.
We are doing Whatever Happened to Janie by Carolyn B.
Yes!
Second part of the Face on the Milk Carton extravaganza.
Immediate payoff, Dan. I did not expect you to bring me the immediate sequel right away.
Yeah, I'm bringing it to you because you're going to hate it.
I mean, that's not a very kind thing to do, Danielle.
Boy, does it not give you more information.
I'm sorry. It's my brain cannot comprehend an entire other book that provides no additional information.
Well, you got to wait till how many are there? 4 or 5? You've got to wait till the next one to really get into the super crazy.
So what does this book even do?
You'll find out today.
Oh,
today
so
on
angry.
Book Retorts.
You pre-angered me, Danielle.
Please join us for Sam's anger.
Oh, I don't think
Part
people
2.
like the episodes where I'm angry. I want to enjoy.
I don't know. They seem like they're hits.
I'm not sure I like this formula.
All right, Sam, I need you to give us, or give the listeners, give me a quick rundown, super fast, which you can do in 2 sentences of what happened on the Face in the Milk Carton.
I did not expect this, so I did not prepare or even try to remember the Face in the Milk Carton at all. But in the briefest thing, there's a girl. Her name is Janie Johnson. She was named by Stanley because, of course, she was. She sees her face on a milk carton one day. He's like, yeah, that's probably, or she sees a face on a milk carton of a little girl. She's like, that was probably me from 13 years ago. And starts having flashbacks, memories to her 3-year-old self, which is nonsense.
So many memories.
So many 3-year-old flashback memories that were somehow
You'll be
repressed.
Disappointed that there aren't that many memories in this book, Sam.
Disappointed or delighted? You be the judge.
There's other stuff to hate. It's fine.
Anyway, pretty much nothing else happens throughout this entire book except she wrestles with whether or not to actually reach out to the family that she thinks is the one she might have been kidnapped from. Her mother supposedly ran after to join a cult, had her with her cult husband, and then dropped her off at her grandparents' house, who raised her in secret as their own child. But also, everyone just immediately accepts the idea that her mother just happened to accidentally kidnap her, walk off with her very casually, and nobody challenges that notion as ludicrous or unlikely, and instead is all on board with it. And at the very end of the last book, she picks up the phone to call the family that she was supposedly kidnapped from after accidentally having a letter sent on her behalf to that family.
I mean, there's no proof that ever happened.
And I'm sure that never comes back up at all in this book, and has never paid off.
It doesn't. I didn't think about it until now, but I don't think they mentioned the letter ever.
So that whole important plot point is dropped. Good start. And so that's the Face in the Milk Carton. I mean,
great.
Apparently, it's a very interesting and complex dive into the psychology of a young girl. I'm sure that it has that to it.
I wouldn't say just that. I would say that Caroline B. Cooney is specifically known for these kind of young adult suspense thrillers with a deep enough emotional arc for, when you're 14 reading this book.
I get it. I just didn't find it all that thrilling to actually have any of the confrontation. It was all speculation.
That's true. And I think as an author, she likes to tell, not necessarily show. And in some ways that works because you're in the characters' heads, but at the same time, it is kind of an interesting way to go about your plot.
Fair enough. And yeah, I'm not an award-winning author, so, clearly I'm the idiot.
I am. Do you remember her neighbor? That seems more important for this plot.
Her love interest, Reeve or Reese or Ruru.
Reeve. Good job. I'm going to go ahead and just refer to him for the rest of the story as Ruru.
Ruru. It's Ruru. Reeve. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So Reeve, they have a little kiss in a leaf pile. She drags his butt into it. She makes him drive her all the way to Jersey for no payoff, and he is not happy about it.
Exactly
no making
that.
out on that drive either, which he totally earned.
Yes, we'll get into that. So I'm going to send you a little summary, which I think really overblows the plot of this story, and you'll appreciate it when we're done. You ready?
So I won't appreciate to begin with. Perfect.
There you go, Sam.
I'm already mad. In the vein of psychological thrillers like We Were Liars, Girl on the Train, and Beware That Girl, are these all Carolyn B. Cooney books?
No.
Okay. They're supposed to know what these books are, I guess?
These are just psychological thrillers. These are well-known psychological thrillers. They're clearly not your genre, Sam. I know what they're talking about.
Okay. Well, again, this shows the divide between us and why we do this show for each other, to expose each other to the gamut of nonsense that we both enjoy. Best-selling author Carolyn Cooney's Janie series delivers on every level. Mystery and suspense blend seamlessly with issues of family, friendship, and love to offer an emotionally evocative thriller ride of a read.
What?
Emotionally evocative thrill ride of a read.
That was so good. Just the way you phrased it. All right, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing this. With the mystery of her kidnapping now unraveled, what? I think it's still very much a mystery. We have not concluded anything. Janie's story continues, and the nightmare is not over. What nightmare? She's a happy kid. She's great. All right. No one can bring back or relive the 12 years gone by. The Spring family wants justice, but who is really to blame? The Johnsons know that they must abide by the court's decisions made, but it's difficult to figure out what's best for everyone. This is a very oddly worded thing. I'm not blaming me for tripping up on this. This is real weird. Also, okay, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but there's a lot of, supposition that is treated as fact.
It makes it sound so dramatic, and it's, the least dramatic thing.
Janie Johnson, or Jenny Spring, who is she? Certainly there's enough love for everyone, but how can the two separate families live happily ever after? Didn't we already discuss this in the last book where she was making a big deal about this? I'm like, no, they could probably just figure out a way to share time together.
Ooh, Sam, we're going to get into it. Boy, are we going to get into it.
All right. Well, I don't want to get into it now because I'm sure we'll have lots to say later. So let's just go, and I'm sure we'll get to it when we get to it.
Perfect. All right. Enter Jody, assumedly from context, Jenny's sister. I'm going to go ahead and refer to her as Janie, until maybe Jenny makes more sense.
Also, Jody,
I can't do this.
Don't do that to your children. Don't be cutesy and give all your kids J names.
No, she didn't. So the mom and dad did Janie and Jenny, or Jody and Jenny.
Yeah, it's so hard.
No, it's so hard. So Jody and Jenny are the two girls, and then there's two twin boys that are
Jason,
named
Jeremiah,
no,
and
they're
Jerome.
named Brendan and Brian or something. I don't remember. They were super not important in the story. And then there's another kid, an older brother named Steven, and they were going to have another kid, but, kidnapping, so they weren't able to do that.
Kidnapping prevents you from having more children, I guess?
No, they just didn't want to,
I get it. I know. Emotionally devastating. I'm not trying to... To be clear to everyone in the outset, I am not making light of kidnapping or child abuse or anything like that, but I am making fun of it in the context of this ridiculous story.
Absolutely, yes. Please take this all with a grain of salt.
Please take this all in the context of Carolyn B. Cooney novels and not with the real tragedy of kidnapping in real life.
Exactly, because otherwise this is a really depressing story. So,
yeah, and this will be a really depressing podcast.
Jody is Jenny's sister, and she remarks that after her sister's kidnapping, Dad took her and Stephen, her older brother, to school every morning and walked them to class, and they weren't allowed to take the school bus, and he literally hand walked them to class.
It's your fault I couldn't have a boyfriend until I was 15.
In fourth grade, Stephen admitted loudly at dinner to his family that he hated Jenny for ruining their lives and that he wished they had a body so they could just bury it and move on. Totally fair. These people, I'm going to put it on the outset, these people need therapy. Family therapy, group therapy, individual therapy that none of these characters are having. I realize it's 1991 or something when the sequel's written, but therapy none of these characters get
in 1991.
Therapy. I know, I think it's just a little less common, but this whole group of people, both sides of the family, need a lot of therapy, and they'd be such a better place.
I mean, obviously after a traumatic event like kidnapping, therapy is high on the list of what you need. And then after reuniting with said estranged family, therapy also, counseling, group counseling could or should be a number one priority.
Yeah, this whole story is just an exercise in I get that it'd be a complicated situation. It would be hard, but it's a whole exercise on what parents probably should not do. Adults should not be doing the things they're doing in this book. Yeah, no,
I get that trauma and grief can do terrible things, but don't torture your kids like that.
Yeah. Wild, man. So anyway, none of them are in therapy. I'm going to put that on the outset as far as I can tell.
Okay.
And they pray over dinner. They decide, like, this day is going to be the end of it, you know? So over dinner, they say their prayers.
They get a phone call.
They're really not yet. She's in 4th grade. Stephen's in only 4th grade right now. This is in the past. Sam,
I'd be much funnier if they got the phone call the day they decided to put it all behind them.
No. So they're praying over dinner because this family's religious. You may remember the other family was not religious at all. They say their goodbyes, burying, quote unquote, Jenny. And the dad says, "Take care of Jenny, Lord, wherever she is. Help us not to mention Jenny again. Help us be a family of 6 and forget that we were ever a family of 7 and they never talk about her ever again."
That's not healthy. You don't have to go from total paranoia and like, you know, sequestering your children away from the world to protect them to pretending you never had a child that was kidnapped. There is a healthy medium here.
I know, it's insane. Like, it's okay to talk about these things once in a while and have like a healthy relationship with the fact that you've, you know, accepted that your child's disappeared or dead or whatever the case may be.
But I mean, it still have grief and complicated feelings about it. But wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, I read that. I was like, holy cow.
I think, honestly,
trauma.
Maybe Janie lucked out by being kidnapped a little bit.
Ooh, it's rough.
Her current parents, grandparents seem a little more on the level, like level-headed than these people.
To be fair, I mean, they had their own issues, but I think they also probably repressed quite a bit.
That's a fair point, with their daughter running off to join a cult and everything.
Right. So now, years later, this kind of starts in media res, so it's like giving you some backstory, and they've already found out that Janie is alive.
Right.
So now years later that Jenny's actually alive, it's hard to reconcile for Jody that she wasn't dead or tortured or anything, but alive and well, raised happily, that they never really needed to worry because she was totally fine somewhere else, you know?
I wasted all my worry on No, I mean, that's not how it works, but yeah, that would be very complicated, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I would say this book does an interesting mix of, I mean, a lot of this is from teenage perspectives, and so you get that kind of like overly dramatic, angry then fine thing, which I feel like you would have a lot of emotions surrounding the situation, but it's also sometimes I'm like, holy cow, you guys, like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So Stephen, he's now 17, I think, and he's a pretty angry teenager, but he's trying his best to be like a big brother and not be angry all the time and, you know, not speak out to his parents and stuff like that. But he does say that Jenny ought to have suffered because they all did. And Jody, I know, I'm telling you, these kids need therapy, Sam.
Wow. Nothing. I mean, if Carolyn B. Cooney, I'm going to put the B in there every time, even if the description doesn't. If Miss B. Cooney if her whole message is that these children need therapy, great book. If it never comes up, oof, not a great message.
It doesn't come up once in the story, as far as I can tell. I was reading quickly. Maybe it's mentioned, but not once do you have a scene of like somebody attending a therapy, you know, session or anything like that, or talking about how they were like deep into therapy or that they're going to restart it or anything.
To continue as we should always do, I'm going to put this in the context of Hyperion, where clearly nobody in this universe is right. Like the family as the ousters and the family as hegemony, like the two warring factions, clearly both of them are wrong and need to be fixed.
Yes. So Jody decides she's going to be the buffer between the two. So she decides she's going to be the buffer between the two, Stephen and
Janie, Joni.
I know.
Judy.
It's going to be hard for me, I can tell already. Because they have matching J names. So she's like convinced they're going to be close. She's finally going to have a sister that's around
BFFs.
her age. Like, she's very excited about this. She thinks it's going to go seamlessly. Like, she may not get along with the rest of the family, but she's definitely going to get along with Jody.
She's going to be disappointed.
Meanwhile, in Connecticut, it did tell me that she does live in Connecticut.
Got it. Well, I'm glad we confirmed that.
So meanwhile, in Connecticut, they are having some family trouble. I mean, you know, it's an issue that she was kidnapped, probably. Yeah,
and it's all complicated by the fact that the people who raised her were not complicit necessarily in the kidnapping, had no awareness of it, and so they're not really at fault. This is one of the situations where none of these people are actually at fault, which is a difficult situation to have, like a tragedy where there is no one to blame.
Or at least nobody involved.
Yeah, no one accessible to blame, because the mother who did the kidnapping is back at her cult life and completely out of the picture.
Yep. And so downstairs, they're up in her bedroom and Janie's bedroom, and downstairs they're having a goodbye party with all her friends and family.
So they're just like, hey, we're going to send Janie off to live with her old family who are strangers to her, and that's it?
Absolutely. This is where you find out that she is moving in with her old family, and We'll get into the details of that shortly, but whoa, is it wild?
That's insane. She's 15. She has a life. She's almost an adult. You don't just, even if she wasn't, you don't be like, okay, pack your stuff in, go live with the strangers.
I think the law on this is deeply questionable, but what do I know? So, Janie's giving her room one last look. Her mom's in there with her, and she wants to hug her mom, but her mom pushes her away, telling her that she's not her mother. And she feels like, and we get a little insight that she feels like she's lost both of her daughters, which I get. However, blaming your daughter for that, crazy. I
mean, blaming your granddaughter, technically, whatever you want to call it. Your supposed granddaughter for that. Also, what a terrible thing to tell a child.
It is.
That you raised.
So lawyers have explained that. So remember we were talking in the last episode about how, actually I don't remember if we talked about this. They kind of like guessed her age. So apparently she's actually a year younger than they thought previously.
She's 14?
Okay. Yeah, I guess she's almost 15 or something. I don't quite know. The timeline of this makes very little sense. Or maybe just recently 15.
Who knows?
But the point is, she's not quite as old as she thought she was. And so because she's not 15 yet, she's still a minor, which was, I thought, a weird sentence. Because I'm like, are you legally a minor or major? Are you legally
Well, no, she's a C major.
15? I mean, I know some states have you can do medical and stuff at 15 without parental permission. I don't know if that also goes over to like your adoption care. Like a kidnapping situation. I don't know. But apparently because she's quote unquote still a minor and must obey her parents, but the parents are not the Johnsons, but are the Springs who want her to, be back in their house full time. And therefore, legally, she has to go back to the house.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, the court obviously has an interest in doing what's best for the child.
Yeah, I would assume it'd be like any kind of adoption case where you'd probably have to work out some kind of like situation that would be best for the child and not just like, well, now we're taking back our kid. Thanks.
Yeah, this person, we're going to rip them away from their friends and family. Like, yeah, maybe you should be part of their life. Maybe Connecticut's not that far from New Jersey. You could go see her on weekends or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like you have to drag her away from all her friends and family immediately or never see her again. Like, there's, again.
Oh, Sam, we're going to get into this.
The extremes.
I'm telling you, this is like an insane thing that they do. I'm going to
oh my gosh. Right now. Wow. They're almost, I know they suffered the kidnapping trauma, but they sound almost worse for Jenny than the kidnapping.
Okay. So, like I said, they're having a goodbye party downstairs. She's been kind of avoiding it just because, it's not like she's like, as she says, she's not just going to summer camp or something. Like, this is like forever goodbye. It feels like.
Yeah.
And she finally gets her mom to hug her, asking her not to be mad. And her mom admits that she's not actually mad at her. She's just mad at Hannah. And she doesn't admit it, but Janie knows that she's also mad at the Springs, even though it's not, logical.
I don't blame her for that because they're behaving abominably.
Well, they're not really mad at that. Nobody seems mad at the plan.
What?
It's just like they're like mad that the Springs ever like bothered to find their child or something. Like, it's weird.
I mean, be mad at the Springs for their actions that they're taking, not like I'm angry. You're right. This is very upsetting.
And Janie's kind of mad at them too because how dare they put their child on a milk carton?
That's not the problem. No.
She can't help it. She's 14, maybe 15.
The parents can't. Oh, all right. I'm sorry. I can't be upset about every illogical emotion, or I'm not going to get through this book.
You're not. So, and though nobody threatened or anything about her returning to them, like it wasn't like it was an ultimatum kind of thing, specifically, they had told the lawyers that they wouldn't prosecute Hannah if she returned, which I'm sure is not how kidnapping works, but that's cool.
Yeah. But Hannah's nowhere to be seen. Who cares?
Yeah, well, they're like, okay, but she's trying to prevent her parents from having to go through an issue, like having to lose Hannah to jail or whatever.
Okay.
So she's feeling some kind of like guilt / parenting thing where she needs to take care of her parents.
Right.
So apparently, wildly, Sam, this is the best part. She has agreed with the lawyers to not telephone, write, or visit for 3 months.
Telephone, visit, or write whom?
The family. She's leaving for the Springs. She's not supposed to write telephone.
The Johnsons.
Yeah, or any of her friends or like anybody in town for 3 months straight.
How is that enforceable? How is that legal? How is that ethical?
And why would that be a good idea? I get clean break, start over, but like, wouldn't it be better to kind of slowly kind of lead her into that? Get to know the family, still have a touchstone in her other world.
What do her friends have to like? This is insane. It's like the family, the Springs, are trying to destroy any semblance of her new life, so she has to start over with them or something. That sounds like a cult tactic.
It's insane.
It's a cult. Oh my gosh, Danielle, it's all cults. The Springs are a cult.
Cults all the way down. Now
no, they're doing the same thing about cults. They're isolating her from her friends and family. This is cult tactics.
It's true. Now we know.
Now we know.
I bet Hannah didn't really even kidnap anybody. It was just all part of the cult, and they don't want to admit it.
No, I bet she did, but it's more like little Jenny, who apparently was so precocious she can remember everything that she did at that age, was like, "You gotta get me out of here, lady. Please take me with you."
Maybe it's a cult turf war between the Hare Krishnas in California and the New Jersey, whatever the cult is, Springs. Cult.
Yeah. It could be anything at this point, Danielle.
I'm assuming the spring cult is all about rebirth, renewal, etc.
Having like 12 children.
Yeah, because it's spring.
Yep.
Fertile time.
I got it, Danielle. Right. I know what the word spring means. It means a metal object in a spiral.
Meanwhile, in Stephen's head, we get to jump around a little in this book. In Stephen's head, he was generally restless and angry, and he hated having grown up in fear and worry, which, totally fair.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't have to do that. And he blamed Jenny, though he knew it was unfair. And 1 month ago, they had been eating at breakfast, a normal morning, everybody was getting along, doing their thing, and when the phone rang, and his mom answered it and turned white as a sheet. And it turns out, Sam, who was it?
It was Pope Benedict.
Yes. How did you know?
Pope John Paul at that time. It was Pope John Paul? I think he was a pope in the 90s, wasn't he?
Ringo? I don't know.
Pope Ringo. Really, Danielle?
You said John Paul.
That was his name.
I just went with it, Sam.
How do you not know there was Pope John Paul II?
I'm sure there was.
My grandmother had a photo of him.
Not weird at all. Okay.
She was Catholic. She had a picture of the Pope.
All Catholics have a picture of the Pope in their house.
All good Italian Catholic grandmothers do. Yeah, Pope John Paul II.
I believed you, Sam. I did not disagree. I just thought it was funny to add in another Pope.
He was consecrated as, when did he become the Pope? I'm going to find that out right now. Canonized, all the different words. Which one means he became Pope? It's not ordination, it's not consecration, it's not canonized. What,
I cannot help you.
Beatified? Beatified? What does it all mean? Oh, he's become a saint, that's, I guess.
You can't ask another non-Catholic how Catholics work.
This is like a World of Warcraft guild. I'm trying to figure out like the different ranks. Like, to be fair, I think like most religions are basically just like any fantasy role-playing game with like ranks and levels. You got to level up through them to get to the ultimate boss. Just tell me when he was Pope. All right, I'm going to Google that. When was John Paul Pope?
Ringo Pope.
Nope. He died in 2005, so I'm guessing he was Pope in the 90s.
Probably.
I got nothing, Danielle. All right. This was a long way to go.
That was pretty good. You just pulled out a Pope, so good job.
I know the popes are. You have John Paul, Benedict. How do you not know all the different popes? And they have Pope Francis now. I don't.
Sam, I don't care.
You don't care, but it's like not knowing who the vice president is.
Also something I don't know that far back.
You know who the president was in the 90s?
Who the vice president was in the 90s?
Yeah.
I'm sure
you don't know
if somebody said the name, I'd go, oh yeah, that was so-and-so's vice president.
Al Gore?
Well, yeah, I remember Al Gore.
He was the president of the 90s. Bill Clinton's vice president. All right, Danielle, wow.
I'm just saying, I don't like, if somebody gets me a president, maybe I could go with a vice president. Maybe.
All right.
We're not playing this game.
What?
I'm terrible with names. You know this.
I know you're terrible with names, Danielle, but this isn't about names. It's about like just being aware of the important people in the, or it's not important, but the supposed influential people in the world around you.
That's what Google and history books are for, and also just general consciousness. So if somebody says the name, you can apply it to the knowledge that you know, but you don't necessarily pull the knowledge out of your hat.
Yeah, when I said John Paul, your first thought was Ringo. So how was that working out for you?
I was joking. I believed it was a pope. I never questioned that John Paul was a pope, Sam.
Ugh. Danielle, we got to move on before you embarrass yourself any further.
Oh my God, you're the one who kept Googling John Paul.
I just want to know when he was Pope, and apparently that's a very complicated question because there's like a million different things you can do to a person. You can consecrate them, you can canonize them, you can beatify them, or whatever. I don't know.
So no, it wasn't Pope John Paul or any other Pope. In fact, It was Jenny.
Wait, let me get another guess.
No, too late. And Jenny told her that she saw her face on the milk carton. Dun, dun, dun!
And then she says, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't us. Click.
So he resents everything that's happening, but he's tried to convince himself that he should set the example as the eldest child.
Question.
Yes.
Why do the Springs, who made a vow of never talking about Janie again, put her face on a milk carton to try to attract her attention?
I don't think they never talked about her again, but I think it was more just they were going to move on and try and live, semi-normal lives and not bring it up constantly.
Prayer literally go, let's be a family of 6 and forget she existed?
Yeah, but I guess a couple years previous, the parents did one last ditch attempt, and the family tried to talk, not the kids necessarily, but the other parts of the family had tried to talk them out of it, and they were like, no, this is going to be our last attempt, is let's put her face on the milk carton.
Fine, sure, whatever.
Okay. I'm just saying. Cut to a few days later, and Janie is trying to settle into her new house.
Janine.
We just jumped ahead. Janie's having a hard time telling the twins apart. They're twins, so kind of fair.
Mean.
And she's never shared a room, and Steven seems to actively dislike her. And this house, I should clarify, you remember she came from a very affluent Connecticut
It's a small
home.
house, are all on top of each other, right?
Yes, and so there's only a couple of bedrooms. They had originally only bought it when they had 2 kids, and they were planning to move when they had more. But then when she was kidnapped, they didn't want to move because they felt like she would never be able to find them again, and it just kind of ended up in this house, even though they have multiple children. So everybody shares a room.
Right.
But the worst part of it is that she feels like she has no connection to her parents. And the house is loud where her old one was quiet. The parents are really excitable, and her other parents had always been really calm. And they didn't even have any bread in their house, Sam. Nobody ate sandwiches. How could you go through life without sandwiches? Quote unquote.
Really cannot fathom how that is the important thing. I mean, not having bread in your house is weird. Bread is a staple of human diet since we came up with the idea of agriculture millennia ago. But, if her biggest concern is, I want my peanut butter sandwiches and milk, then priorities, lady. And also get a better sandwich.
Also, the craziest part is that they have this many kids and they don't just make sandwiches for lunch. Wild.
What do they make?
I don't know, but
Here,
they apparently
fish.
Don't make sandwiches.
We only make lettuce wraps.
My parents had far less children, and we ate a ton of sandwiches.
I still eat a ton of sandwiches. They're delicious. They're great. I mean, the Earl's sandwich was really onto something. Point is, this is why this was a terrible idea. You don't just take a child from one context, pop it in another, say, okay, these are your family.
It's going to go great. Don't worry about it.
Family, we know this. We've known this since then, that we've had adoption. Your parents are the people who raise you. Whether, those are the people you identify with, those are the people you have the experience with. Just because you're biologically related to somebody doesn't make them, quote unquote, your family in that sense.
Well, she can't talk to her other family for 3 months, Sam. She's got to suck it up, Buttercup.
That's insane. I mean, 3 months is not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but also, what an insane request.
Yeah. So again, as I mentioned, it's maybe a 3-bedroom house, I think. Maybe 3 bedrooms. There's 7 people in this house. They have 1 bathroom, wild, and they have pails to carry their toiletries in and out of the bathroom. They're not allowed to keep them in there.
I thought you were going to say they had pails to do their business in.
Terrible. Maybe. There's 7 people in a bathroom. Thank goodness none of them have any kind of issues where they need to go to the bathroom frequently.
I'd like to see you share a bathroom with 7 other people.
Oh my god, it'd be a terrible, terrible experience. And nobody needs to know my medical history, but I need my own bathroom. It's a real life thing. Anyway, I would never work in this house. They'd have to keep me in Connecticut, my fancy, fancy house.
I'm medically required to stay with this family. Right, suckers.
Seriously. You guys are going to have to move, or I'm going to have to move back to Connecticut. This is not going to work out for me. So she apologizes to her family at one point. This kind of, like I said, the author...
Apologizes for what? Existing?
Well, she's trying to tell him she's really trying. She's just having a really hard time. She's been kind of withdrawn, quiet, not settling in as quickly as they were hoping. And she tells him that she just feels like she's been taken from her real family twice, and it's a hard adjustment. The mom, Spring Mom, I'm going to call her that because I don't remember her real name.
Okay, great.
Probably.
Call her Janie's mom, just like that Fountains of Wayne song.
I don't want to do Janie's mom, because that's just going to be confusing. Yeah. So Spring Mom tells her the Johnsons weren't her real family, but they, appreciate them and are in debt to them for taking such good care of her. But they're her real family. You may never talk to them again. They're a real family. And besides, says Jody, they didn't take her away. She called them. She wanted to come here with them and live here.
That's not at all what she wants. She just wants some freaking answers. There's a difference between calling to confirm a hunch and being like, hey, take me away from this lovely family to live with you.
Yeah. And Janie's like, well, I didn't really want to come. It's more that I didn't want you guys to worry. And obviously I thought you should know that I was, being raised okay and was fine. I didn't really necessarily think it through.
She's 14 or whatever. She doesn't
Right.
think things through.
So the mom says they love her and are glad to have her home, and that's the end of that conversation.
Not a very good conversation.
They need therapy.
Yeah, we know.
That Monday, she starts school. Jody's helped her pick out clothes to wear that would fit in with her New Jersey kids, because, vastly different than her Connecticut kids. And she was stunned when they went through her wardrobe and all her accessories, noting that clearly the other family had been rich, because she just has an insane amount of clothing items, even though Janie always thought that she didn't really have enough.
Also, she's a single child. I mean, not
that helps.
Yeah, you just say, if you have the same amount of money, it goes a lot further with one child versus many.
And, Sam, she has 30 bands for her swatches. Amazing. So many bands for her swatches.
I just sat here thoroughly unimpressed when you said that, Danielle. I mean, I'm sure a swatch is a great watch, but I'm not sure why you need 30 bands for it. And why
because her and her Johnson mom really liked to match their bands to every outfit. It was like a fun thing they did in the morning.
If I pay $20 per band or whatever, go for it. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. It's a great accessory.
But apparently that's just an absurd amount, which it is. And Jody's just like, holy cow, lady, why are you so rich?
I mean, how many colors even are there, Danielle, for 30
I don't know.
bands?
Apparently there's 30 of them.
At least. Maybe 40 even.
So she goes into school, and unfortunately word has got around that she's the kidnapped kid. So everybody's kind of like side-eyeing her.
This is going to go great for her.
So this gets insane. They had managed to duplicate all her other classes from Connecticut, except one. Do you want to guess which class they weren't able to duplicate in New Jersey, Sam?
Whatever that AP writing class was.
Nope.
Gym?
No.
Okay.
Give up?
Basic math. They don't teach math in New Jersey.
No, it's silversmithing. You have to remember, she came from a family that ate lamb at a football game.
Right. I forgot. She's basically grew up a wasp.
Silversmithing. She was very disappointed because now she doesn't get to make jewelry, which she'd always wanted to learn how to make. Instead, she has to take chorus, and she can't even sing. Womp womp.
I mean, what sucks is not that she can't do silversmithing, which, that's fun, I'm sure. It's that they think this is a good idea in any way.
That they even offered silversmithing. Amazing.
I took a class in high school where we made rings.
Yeah, but it wasn't specifically silversmithing.
Okay, sure. But I'm just saying our high school was pretty bougie too, Danielle.
Yeah, we did have some weird stuff.
We had a class that was specifically on The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was not in that class, but I heard a lot about that class. I knew a lot of people who took that class.
It was not amazing.
Sure, we had some really interesting lit classes. I took a dystopian lit class that was pretty cool. We took very specific, we had a lot of variety of things, I guess.
And I'm not trying to disparage that teacher. I just not a big fan of Lord of the Rings, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah. You and I have that in common. It's okay.
I know.
We're sorry,
I like The Hobbit
everybody.
A lot. I
did like The Hobbit. I really did enjoy The Hobbit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's an actual story.
Samesies. Okay.
Not a history book. Anyway, let's go on.
Before we lose all the listeners, we're sorry. We love you guys.
To be fair, if you've listened to this podcast this long, you know our taste in media cannot be trusted.
It's true. All right. To her surprise, Janie finds that she actually likes the choir. Their teacher, Mrs. P, is very funny, and nobody really pays attention to her because they're focused on the teacher. And in each class, she's been assigned a student to be her buddy until she gets used to school. In choir, Chrissy is her seatmate in the alto section. And Chrissy lets her know that they had an assembly about her.
That doesn't help. Do they do the exact wrong thing at every turn in this book? Hey, let's gather a bunch of teenagers together and tell them there's a very special student coming and to be extra nice to her because I'm sure teenagers are not vicious and will not use that as ammunition against her.
That's 100% what happened. I laughed so hard when I read this section. The entire school came. That's 700 people, Sam. And the principal told them the whole story so there wouldn't be any questions and to leave her alone and let her adjust and that every teenager questions who they are and Janie must be doing it more than most, so just to let her be.
Were these adults ever teenagers? Do they not understand?
Wild. And Janie wants to throw up, and I am with you, Janie. That would be horrifying.
What moron. The parents in this universe, all of them, are absolutely unconscionably terrible.
Yeah, every adult in this entire story is insane. At school, Jody's hanging out with friends, and they desperately want to know, what's going on, what she's like, what's
Tell me
the
about
story.
the kidnapped sister. Oh,
I mean, wouldn't you be like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to know everything, but I wouldn't, pry. I have some decorum.
Well, you're not a bunch of teenage girls. Jody doesn't want to admit that it's kind of awful because Janie wants to be called Janie and she's exhausting to be around and she's difficult and she's quiet and she's like hard to get along with and apparently none of
like
these
3 days.
Literally, like this is I think day 3 or day 4 and she's in school and I'm like, why do none of these people have any empathy for this kid at all? This poor
Who's just
kid.
taken from her entire life and brought here 3 days ago. And like, why isn't she chipper and easy to get along with?
Yeah, and Jody's kind of mad because she thinks her family's pretty great and Janie doesn't seem to appreciate it. And also she's a little jealous of everything that Janie has just because she's, you know, so much more well off than she is.
Right.
And her friends are apparently the only empathetic people in this entire store. Her friends are like, it's only been 4 days. Like, it's going to take a while for everything to kind of gel, you know, at least probably a year, right? Doesn't that seem like a good timeline? Like, let her settle in.
Why are these friends not the main characters? The awful people who are.
And they also want to know when the FBI is coming over to do their interview, which that's the first we've heard of it.
Yeah, what? FB what?
So that's all I've got for you about the FBI so far, Sam.
Or ever, hopefully.
Yeah, we're never going to mention the FBI ever again.
Perfect.
Next week, her parents won't let them talk to... Hang on, sorry. I don't know what that sentence means.
Next week? I think you mean the FBI is coming over next week to talk to her.
No, I'm not.
Okay, well then I have no idea what you mean, Danielle. I'm just trying.
No, it is. So next week is when
right.
the next week the FBI is supposed to come over, but her parents won't let them talk to Janie until she's settled in.
Okay.
Janie, I didn't have a subject in my sentence, so it was confusing.
Stupid grammar.
Janie was having a hard time because the Spring family did not do, quote unquote, things the way her real family did, also quote unquote. Nobody visited museums, nobody went to antique shows, nobody got theater tickets, nobody belonged to the symphony series.
None of that bougie, posh nonsense. I'm not going to sit here and say that anyone who doesn't go to the symphony is some kind of weird, uncultured swine, because that's absolutely not the truth. Like, there is a privilege that you can afford to attend all those events. 100% true. But also, like, it doesn't make you bad if you do enjoy those things.
Yep, I would agree with that. And I did a lot of those kinds of things when I was little, but I also did a lot of super non-bougie things because we actually had no money.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can still afford to, like, I mean, a lot of museums are, like, donation-based or whatever, so.
So that weekend, it's, like, pure chaos in the house. The twins have friends over, so does Steven. Jody has a friend over who's in a competition to create a dress out of the most unlikely material, and she gets roped into helping sew Matchbox cars into, like, an old, like, 60s vintage dress. And the mom eventually starts dinner and asks Janie to help. And as she's helped sew the dresses on, she'd like never sewn before, and she was like, it was really difficult for her, and she's, you know, kind of just in the middle of all this chaos. And she suddenly realizes that she's actually gotten a little used to the noise and the chaos, and that she was having a good time. And she's suddenly appalled with herself, like wondering what her Johnson mom would think of her actually liking them and, like, you know, suddenly getting along with people.
This is why you don't take a girl, a young person, whoever it is, and pit them against two families, because they shouldn't have to worry about disappointing one family by liking the other one. They should be able to like both of them.
Yeah, and the parents that like let her go should have had a more in-depth conversation of like, and maybe they did and you just don't see it, but it seems to imply that they did not have this conversation of like, okay, here's what we're gonna do, here's the game plan, it's okay.
It'll be 3 months.
It's 3 months, like you're just, we want you to get a chance to settle in, we'll talk after that, we'll touch base, it's gonna be really good, like it's okay if you love them and want to spend time with them, like you need to prepare your child for this inevitability.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, don't just tell your child, oh, I'm no longer your mother, and goodbye.
Yeah, insane, man.
This
kid.
Is worse than the first. I mean, like, this book has more plot, at least, than the first book, but everyone in this book is way worse.
Yeah, that's why I would argue this book is, like, a little bit weirder than the first book, not necessarily in, like, the crazy things that are happening, but just, like, the terrible decisions literally every character makes.
Wild. All right, what terrible decision is next, Danielle?
Someone suggests that Jody's friend should have sewn, like, My Little Ponies on the dress, and Janie offers that she's like the first time she's really, like, tried to have a conversation with them. She offers that she used to take riding lessons, and she had won a lot of ribbons, but after the third horse that she owned, she kind of got lost interest in it and just didn't continue pursuing it.
Oh, she owned horses.
Yeah, I know, everybody's staring at her, and Steven gets mad after someone mentions that her parents were rich, like, whoa, your parents were rich, and he gets really upset about about it, yelling that they weren't her parents and stop calling them that. And she's like, they were my parents. I didn't have any others. And he points out that she had parents here. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that I had parents here. Like, obviously, it was like a whole different life.
This is not a difficult concept.
Yeah, and he doesn't believe her. How could she switch to a whole new name and identity and not know she had a whole other family?
She was 3 years old.
And he's 17. I'm like, you are old enough to know that you don't remember squat at 3.
To be fair, maybe the Spring family has preternaturally amazing memories, just like Janie demonstrated remembering
maybe,
3.
Maybe he thinks it's normal.
Yeah, he's like, you should remember every detail from the second you're born. So you should know this.
Yeah, and she's really angry at this conversation, obviously.
Reasonably.
But she admits that she's not sure why she didn't argue or tell them her other name, or if she did, why they didn't listen. But she's like, dude, I was 3. And he's like, yeah, old enough for complete sentences and to make it clear who you are. My brain was like exploding. I'm like, 3-year-olds! 3-year-olds!
Has he ever met a 3-year-old? I mean, I'm baffled. I'm just completely bemused.
And like, you're gonna believe unless they're like really coherent 3-year-old, you're not gonna necessarily believe a 3-year-old that's just randomly like saying a different name or like,
gibberish, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, like being quirky. You're just like, okay, 3 years old. Like, they're weirdos.
They lie all the time.
Crazy.
I don't blame a teenager for not necessarily having the most emotional maturity, but the parents should be stepping in and putting the kibosh on that kind of talk.
Absolutely. And Jane, I actually don't think the parents are actually in the room at this moment, because I think she's wishing they would walk in to interrupt, and they don't.
But I mean, in general, they should have had a conversation with the kids.
Should have a big conversation with all the kids, and probably when she got there and all set everybody down and like expectations and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
If only.
And Janie's like, obviously I've wondered that, why I didn't fight or break free or anything. Don't you think it's been awful to live with that?
3 years old!
I know. Again, we talked about this last time. It's nonsense.
All right, let's just skip it. I'm going to say the same thing over and over again.
And one of the twins says it wasn't her fault, it was the Johnsons' fault. He was sure she told them many times, and they didn't listen, and they just kept her. They probably tortured her, and she's blocked it all out.
What?
And Jada gets really mad and yells that he has no idea what he's talking about and is wrong, and that they're her parents. So there. And that's the end of that chapter.
Man, going great. This is a great plan.
I know, these children are getting along fabulously. One night, she wakes up crying and goes downstairs, and she finds the Springs, the parents, in the kitchen, and asks if she can call the Johnsons. Begs to call the Johnsons. And they relent, and she talks to her mom for quite a while, catching up. And Mr. Spring asks Janie if he can speak with them as well. And she hands him the phone. And he suggests to Mrs. Johnson that they don't cold turkey it, that she can talk to them every day, and then they can work out a new schedule, and she's adjusted a little bit.
The first good idea anyone's ever had.
I know. Insane. Man, insane. And Janie's like thrilled, feeling like she finally has a lifeline back to, you know, her old life.
Oh, man. What about poor Reeve, her hunky boyfriend, kinda?
We'll get there, Sam.
Is he hunky, Danielle? Is he described as hunky? Or is he more like gangly?
No, he's super hunky. He was gangly, but he's filled out in the last little bit.
Oh, yeah, all the right places.
She gets back on the line, and Johnson mom tells her that he sounds like a wonderful dad, and they're clearly trying to make it work and make compromises, you know, to fit her in, and she needs to try and make it work too, and, you know, sometimes she's going to have to make compromises. And Janie knows she's right, and she hasn't been trying as hard as she should be, which, to be fair, she has not put in as much effort as the family's putting in, but also at the same time, they all need to, like, figure out a better plan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would not put a lot of effort into a clearly terrible idea either.
So she hangs up the phone, and she feels really bad about her Spring parents because they're clearly kind of like, you know, upset about this whole situation, though they're trying to be supportive. And she realizes that she could love them too. They clearly have her best interest in mind. Arguable, but, you know, in the book. And she leaves the room quickly, afraid to admit it to herself, and afraid that whatever love she has is not enough to go around, that she'll like somehow run out of it. It's not a
finite resource.
I know, but she's like 15-ish.
Right, okay.
So time passes, and though she has a lot of bad moments, she also has some good ones. And they teach her to play Super Mario, and they convince her not to cut her hair short, and she tries to support the twins at basketball. And so they're, you know, trying to get along. She has a bunch of little his book's very vignette-y.
That's a good word. It sounds like an Italian restaurant.
Vignette.
Welcome to Vignetti. Try the lasagna.
Lasagna.
Lasagna?
Lasagne.
Okay, well, we're terrible people. Continue.
Sorry, Italians. We don't mean it. After Super Mario one day, they go to have snacks, and they're going to have some chocolate chip cookies, and someone offers her milk, and she suddenly, tells them and remembers that she's allergic, and that makes her remember her family, and then she has a guilt attack that she's suddenly, like, in this moment of playing Super Mario and getting along with everybody and, eating cookies, that she had, like, kind of forgotten about her other family for a brief moment in time.
That is a complicated situation.
Yes, I feel for her. It's probably like losing someone you love and then, realizing that you've gone through a day without thinking too much about them.
Yep.
Jody totally loses it. She gets really mad that Janie's like upset all of a sudden about this. Jody yells at her that she's brought them nothing but pain since she was 3 years old and how she always wanted a sister, and Janie just makes it impossible. And she always writes her other name, her Janie name, on her homework, and she barely talks to her, and she telephones her family all the time, and she might as well be stabbing mom and dad with a knife. She's not even trying, Sam.
These teenagers. This is why I'm glad I'm no longer a teenager. I mean, I feel for teenagers. I appreciate the struggles they have, but boy, it's so nice not to be one anymore.
Yeah, less emotionally involved. Janie knows that's true, like that she hasn't been trying as hard as the other people in her family have been. And the parents walk in during the middle of the fight and nobody knows what to do. It's also of note that Jody throws a chair across the room during this argument.
Oh, sure. Jody, chair hucker. Got it.
Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, Reeve is contemplating how hot Janie is.
Oh, Reeve. Anybody contemplating, you definitely mean he's rubbing one out, right?
He doesn't say that in the book. He's just contemplating
He's a teenage boy. If at any given moment you can make an educated guess, that's probably what's happening.
Sure, that's probably what's happening. And also how insane it was that they didn't agree to some kind of divorce-style settlement where she could hang out with both families. Agreed, Reeve.
How is Reeve the only one who has any good ideas?
I don't know. And he's stoked because he just made it into college, and he didn't think he was going to make it into college. As you might remember, he wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer.
But he's hunky, so that's all he needs.
Well, see, his priorities, according to the book, his first priority was to make it over 6 feet tall. He did that, so he was feeling good about it. He had
control over that one, I bet.
The second priority was to get some muscles when he got over 6 feet tall, and he's really filled out in the last year. So he's pretty pleased about that. And now his third goal was then school. So he's put in some effort in the last year, and he's managed to get into a, middle of the road, decent college. And he's very excited. I'm shocked
that Janie, Jenny, Jody, Jennifer, whoever is not somewhere on that list of priorities.
No, those were his 3 priorities.
Wild.
His personal priorities, Sam, and then Janie. Okay, he totally didn't get girls. They talked a lot, which he didn't understand, and he doesn't understand why they keep repeating this.
He's 15 or like 12.
No,
what?
he's 18, almost 18. He'll be 18 very shortly.
And he's like, girls are icky. They have cooties.
Not icky. He's like, I just don't get them. They just kind of repeat the same things over and over. It's not like one and done. They just want to talk things out all the time.
They're not human beings or something.
He's like the most boy.
This is awful. I take back everything nice you said about him. This is...
So now that he just recently turned 18, like literally, I think in the last few days. So now that he's 18, he could drive down to New Jersey without anyone stopping him.
Yeah, but isn't Janie like 14?
I think 15, because okay, I'll tell you, not a spoiler. She turns almost 16 in the book. She turned 16 according to her previous birthday, but I guess it's a couple months behind her. So I think she's still 15, but she'll be 16 shortly. And I think
I'm just trying to figure out the age difference between her and this now adult man.
I would say it's like 2 and a few months, 2 years and a few months. That's
probably fine. Again, I'm not trying to...
And they were raised together, school together. I mean, we can get at the arguments of like 18 versus 16, but...
I'm not interested in getting to those arguments.
No, I'm not
like
either.
Romeo and Juliet laws. They're like, no, thank you. I'm just trying to make sure that like Reeve isn't obsessing over someone who's like, oh no, she's actually 12 or something.
No. She's basically almost 16 and he just turned 18. Fine. And they go to school together and stuff.
Again, you said the timeline, this is very weird, and you said her age changed. I was not sure. Like, I was very confused.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was trying to talk through what happens towards the end of the book with her 16th birthday, and I realized I think it's just a few months difference in terms of her, what they thought her age was versus what it is
clearly still got the hot for Janie, whatever, and is like determined to go down and surprise her with a conjugal visit.
Yeah, and she's written him 2 secret letters that she had Connie, whatever her name was in choir, send off to him, because apparently she can't secretly.
You better about names, wow.
Whatever her name was, she doesn't come up ever again. She's a wasted character.
Except for now.
Except for right this minute where she's referenced once. She never goes to choir class again, as far as I can tell.
You would being terrible at telling me about Hyperion. You would not remember any of those characters' names.
I would have notes, Sam. That's the whole point.
That didn't help you here, Danielle.
That's because I can't. I could scroll back up, but why bother? It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I didn't write her name in there. I didn't even write that part in there. I actually remembered it. Thank you very much.
Oh, look at you, fancy pants.
And so he really wants to go down, surprise her, show her his acceptance letter to college, and probably get it on in the Jeep. Let's admit it.
As much as possible.
He's feeling frisky.
Stuff. Yeah.
Back at the spring house, Jody is lamenting the fact that she lost her temper. She feels really bad about it. Her friends tell her to think of Janie as like an exchange student. You know, they don't speak the same language. They have different beliefs and customs. They're confused, and she really needs to chill and like let her, you know, experience her new culture and get to know it.
Yeah, Jody needs to like, seriously. I mean, her friends are they're the Greek chorus of reasonableness.
They totally are. It's insane. And she's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I should think that.
Immediately throws the chair across the room.
That night, Janie's Johnson parents call and tell her that they've had a few conversations with the Springs, and though it's hard for them to say, she needs to try harder. Janie needs to try harder. She's not trying, and they, as a family, they deserve that she, you know, tries to get to know them a bit better.
Why aren't you trying harder, traumatized child?
They encourage her to write down some resolutions since she's always liked journaling, so they think maybe it'd be, you know, something that would be helpful for her, which I think is actually probably one of their first good ideas.
Probably.
Okay, so she decides to make her list. Her list is call the Springs mom and dad at some point. If they say Jenny, she'll answer and stop thinking that they're talking to somebody else in the room.
Fair.
She'll stop daydreaming that she's not a Spring. She'll try and fit in, and she'll not hide herself in the girls' room at school and cry all the time. Poor Janie.
I mean, that last one is probably more indicative of some emotional trauma she used to work through.
I know. I feel like she's allowed to do that if she wants to.
Yeah, I mean, it's her party. She can cry if she wants to.
Meanwhile, exclamation point, Reeve has made it to New Jersey! Yay!
Yay! Nothing solves depression like Nookie. So that's never gone wrong.
And he boldly just walks up and knocks on the door. And Stephen answers, and he's very surprised to see him. But he lets him in. The family is there, and they recognize him as he introduces himself. They recognize him as the boy who drove her down the previous fall, like when they told her the story, you know.
How do they recognize him?
They don't recognize his face. He says his name and everything, and that he's a friend of Janie's, and they're like, oh, you're the boy that like drove her down, and, you know, wish you got to see us for the first time. And they offer him some food, and Reeve is surprised that they're not awful, because in his head, they were like the enemies, you know, they were keeping her here and not allowing her to...
They stole my Nookie from me.
Exactly.
Like, he only thinks of Jenny as one thing, and it's not good.
Yeah. So Janie shows up, and this is all from Reeve's perspective, so you get like none of Janie's internal monologue, which is interesting. So Janie shows up, and they hug, and Reeve asks if he can take her out. He asks the family, and they agree to their surprise. And she has to be home by 8 p.m. because he needs to get back to Connecticut, and it's a 5-hour drive. And so his curfew's at 1 a.m.
Ooh, that's a late curfew. He's 18.
It's a weekend, too.
Yeah.
After they leave, the family discusses how impressed they are by the change in Janie, because once she gets home, they're like, she's super happy. What? Having relationships with people outside, like where she gets to actually keep the relationships she's had for years is helpful?
Seeing the friends that she grew up with makes her happy? What a shock. Not isolating her from her entire life? Oh, these people are idiots.
Yeah, it's crazy. So they realize that's kind of what they're aiming for. Like, that's the version of Janie. They were, weren't sure what the normal version of Janie was like, and this is the version they want. Yep. So the Reeve and Janie end up coming back actually a little bit earlier than 8 because Reeve decides he wants to get to know the family.
Getting good with the parents, always a good idea.
Always a good idea. And Jody just like loves him. She thinks he's cute and funny and smart and amazing. And
how
she totally understands why
Janie
loves him. No, Jody loves him.
I know, but how she's like jealous.
She's not jealous.
Oh.
She's just like, oh, I could totally see why Janie loves this guy. And she loves who Janie is with him. Like, she's like, I want that version of Janie or Jenny in my life.
Well, maybe treat her like a human being.
And Reeve finally admits that one of the reasons he had come down is because he wants to take Janie to prom. And to their surprise, the family agrees, even though logistically that seems like a nightmare.
Connecticut prom.
Yeah, and he's so funny because in a little bit about it, he's like, and I don't quite know how that's going to work because she needs to stay probably at least one night, maybe 2. And, I realize you guys don't necessarily want her staying with the Johnsons. Maybe she could stay at my house, which is like next door. Maybe she can stay at my house. My parents would really be thrilled about that. But like, I don't know. They're like, no, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Yeah, she can go to prom with you. And I was like, how are you going to figure it out? Are you going to get him a hotel room? How's this going to work out?
These parents went from never speak of your formal life again to go to prom with your kind of boyfriend right away. 180.
Yeah, it's insane. So after his visit, Janie has a turnaround. She's trying as hard as she can to follow her rules, and she kind of realizes since she wrote them down, she can kind of like look at them. They're like a good, I guess, base for her to like turn back to and kind of move forward.
Yeah, reference point.
She slowly starts to get along with the family. Unfortunately, it's finally interrupted by Mr. Mollison, the FBI agent assigned to their case for the last several years.
Mr. Mollison.
So she gets home, I think, from school, and the room is filled with cops, and she's surprised because nobody's thought to warn her. Why didn't
interview one found child? He's not in danger.
So apparently it's the FBI agent, the something of the state police that was involved, and then the local police person that was involved.
Let me tell you what would happen in the situation. Nothing. They'd be like, oh, he was found. Great. We can focus on our other caseloads instead of having to deal with this one anymore. Just check it off the box.
Well, apparently not, because the cops fill her in on the post-kidnapping. Basically, if you want to hear the story of what went down.
Sure. Let's get this nonsense going.
Basically, at first they thought she had wandered off. They did a search of the store, the mall. You remember she disappeared in the mall. They did a search of the store, the mall. They checked abandoned cars and places for bodies. And Janie suddenly realizes as they're telling the story, like what happened with the springs, like the trauma that they went through. She's like, oh, you thought I was dead, and we're like looking for a dead body, and that I could see where that would be really traumatizing, and why you
think?
guys are maybe the way that you are. And she wants to like hug them, but she can't quite bring herself to do that. And eventually they find a waitress who recalls the woman with the blonde hair and the redheaded kid. And none of the crime unit had been involved in an actual kidnapping before, because it's really rare that a complete stranger kidnaps someone. It's usually, as we discussed in the last book, which is probably true. It's probably somebody that the family actually knows that's kidnapping them.
Sure.
Anyway, long story short, it turns out that they were the Johnsons were using Lizzie. Do you remember Lizzie, the sister of Reeve? The pre-law or the law student or whatever the heck she is.
To be her representative, and she was terrible at it.
Yeah, apparently they used her as like their go-between, like their lawyer, quote unquote. And and even though Lizzie said that they couldn't prosecute Hannah because everybody agreed that nobody wanted to do anything about Hannah, they definitely can prosecute Hannah, and they plan to do it if they can find her.
Why are they telling Janie this? And also,
they're just interviewing her, I think.
I mean, to be fair, they have the ability to do that because this is a criminal affair, so it's not like a civil thing where you can just drop the charges or whatever, I think. I'm not really sure how criminal justice works, but it sounds like something that would be out of the hands of the individual to decide whether or not to prosecute.
Yeah, I feel like they'd have to try and at least give a good attempt to find Hannah. Because she didn't kidnap a child.
Right. Like a murder, like, oh, I don't really, like, if someone murders your daughter or whatever, like, you don't want to, it's like, I don't want to press charges. Like, that's not your choice. The state has an interest in that.
I imagine it's similar. Kidnapping's probably high up there on the list of things you're not supposed to do.
I mean, okay, let's not, like, try to create a rank here because this is a bad idea.
Oh, I just meant it's probably it's a similar situation to murder in terms of lawfully speaking.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised by that. I also think, like, it was definitely irresponsible to make that promise to Janie.
Especially
about
as
that.
Not a full lawyer, as far as I can tell.
And having no actual...
Maybe Lizzie is.
Well, I mean, if she's a full lawyer, then she's clearly a very bad one. If she doesn't understand that basic concept of criminal law.
Well, she doesn't do criminal. Apparently, she's not a criminal lawyer, so she
then
just
why is she even involved in this? Get a professional.
Because they knew her.
It.
I don't know, Sam. I think it's dumb, but here we are.
She should have recused herself if she's like, this is way above my head.
Well, she didn't, and now they had bad information. So they find out that Hannah was arrested 2 years prior in New York City, so her prints are on file, but they've obviously lost track of her since then. They didn't realize she was wanted for kidnapping at the time.
Yeah.
The family asks her if she's ever seen a picture of Hannah, and she says there was one in the attic, and she used to look like a used rag doll, she says.
That's not very kind.
This is a terrible conversation. Jody says she can see her perfectly. Nobody is ever best friends with that kind. They're always on the fringes. They're doomed.
What an awful thing to say about a human being who is definitely mentally ill and struggling.
Yeah. And Hannah was arrested for prostitution, apparently. And so they kind of figure that maybe once the Hare Krishna's kind of dissolved, or I guess, maybe she's not part of the cult anymore or whatever happened. Like she's clearly not. She was in New York City. The cult was in California. Maybe she escaped, but it sounds like it dissolved and they just kind of like went their own separate ways. At least that's implied. And she ended up in New York City, and Janie asks if they told her parents about it. the Johnson parents. And they're like, yeah, we had to question them and everything. So they know about this as well. And Janie's like, oh my God, I have to call my parents. Like they're going to be, They're
going to be so distraught because they learned about their poor daughter. Like, again, I'm not excusing kidnapping in any way. way, but obviously Hannah did not have she had a very tragic life, obviously. Yeah. And some empathy is warranted is all I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and I have very mixed feelings about this next part, which is that her spring dad says that she can't call them right now, that it's the truth whether she likes it or not, and she's not the only one suffering, and they're suffering 10 times more than she is because it's their daughter.
Not a contest!
I know. And that they could pretend otherwise, but now that she's gone, they have to face the truth. So now that Janie's gone, they have to face the truth. So he kind of suggests that they've been using Janie as kind of like a buffer so they don't have to think about Hannah. And so it's not like she should give them time to do that and not intrude on that at this very moment in time, essentially. Like everybody's hurting, but they have to deal with the hurt and not just rely on her and ignore it. And they all hug it out and she hugs him for the first time. And she's like, you're right. We'll talk later kind of thing. So that was a conversation with the FBI agents.
Not a good conversation.
No. Things go well for a while, but Janie, this is crazy. Things go well for a while. Like, the book's puttering along for a couple of pages, and then Janie suddenly realizes that she wants to go back.
Sure. I mean, whatever. I'm not surprised, maybe.
180, though. It's literally just like, things are going great. I want to go back. She finally calls the Spring mom, and then she goes, Mom, I want to go back to the Johnsons. She wants to go back after school ends. And Mrs. Spring, Jody, and Stephen agree that they'll take her back after school ends back to New Jersey. And they're all clearly very upset about it.
Back to Connecticut, you mean?
Sorry, yes, back to Connecticut.
Okay, I didn't miss something here.
Nope, they're going to take her back. They just agree with it. So, cut forward to them traveling back to Connecticut. And they stop at a rest area, and suddenly Janie kind of breaks down and starts crying. And she admits that she blames herself for everything. And then Mrs. Spring admits that she also blames herself for everything because she was so busy with the twins the day that she was kidnapped. She didn't have enough time, and she wasn't keeping track of all the kids. And she just I feel like this is a situation where nobody...
Guilt, I get it. This is, yes, something that she'll work through in therapy, you're right.
They hug, and then they decide that they're just going to blame Hannah, who's really the one to blame for this, technically. I
mean, technically, yes, Hannah should be blamed
but she also
for the actual
has some
kidnapping.
Mental health issues, I
Yeah,
suspect.
but also, again, blame, but, empathetically get her help. Don't just, justice is about restorative justice, not necessarily just punishment.
Exactly. So they drop her back off at the house in Connecticut, and they leave. So after Janie leaves, Jody moves the extra bed that she had in her room for Janie. She moves it out of the room, and Stephen and her start talking about kind of what they're going to do moving forward and how upset they are and how they really wish Janie would move back. And they decide that this is all Hannah's fault, and they want to go after her.
So they're going to go vigilante justice on Hannah.
Yes. They don't feel like the police are really looking. It's kind of, they felt like when the FBI and the police
What are these children going to do?
I don't know. Let me get to the part because it's crazy. It's very teenage
If this
nonsense.
turns into the Hardy Boys tracked down a kidnapper, I'll be very upset.
Only briefly, Sam. We're almost done with the book.
Already.
I told you this was terrible and you're going to hate it. So they don't feel like they're really looking because when they got the gist or the feeling from the police and the FBI when they showed up that it was almost kind of like a curiosity, that they sort of wanted to touch base with the kidnap victim because they'd been part of the case, but not that they were actually going to do anything about it since they kind of felt like Hannah was just lost to the wind.
Okay.
So they assume that she might still be in New York City since I guess the cult disbanded, as I said. I don't, they're just assuming.
It's easy to find someone in New York City based solely on a first name.
Absolutely. Well, they have their last name. They know it's Javinson.
But didn't they change their last name from Johnson?
The Javinson, but they know the original name. They know the story.
I didn't know if they knew that. I didn't know that. All right.
They know that. And
who knows if Hannah's even going by that anymore, though?
Okay, I agree that finding last name Javinson would probably be pretty simple. I can't imagine there's a ton of them. But the idea that
it's that simple.
But they don't think it's that simple. They don't even think it's that simple. They don't even think that she's necessarily registered anywhere because they assume I'll get there. So one of the kids is like, well, how are we ever going to find them?
You're
New York
so confused by your own book.
No, this is the confusing part. So they decide they're going to go to New York City. And one of the kids is like, okay, so New York City, big city, how are we going to do this? Are we even going to be able to find this woman? And one of the kids says, but what are the odds of Hannah Javinson finding a 3-year-old from our family? If she could do it, we can do it.
That's nonsense. That's a complete fallacy on how statistics work. Yeah. She didn't set out to find a show from there. She found a child who just happened to be from your family. She could have run to any child.
Right.
Oh.
But how would they get to New York City? Because they're pretty closely monitored by their family, who's been, paranoid ever since their child was kidnapped, understandably.
Take the New Jersey Transit just to.
Yeah, but they can't just leave for the day, like the kids, like their parents are going to know. But it turns out that their parents are actually going on vacation in a few weeks, and they're supposed to be staying with their aunt and uncle, who are a little less strict. They're strict, but they're not as strict. And so they figure they can probably sneak out for the day, and as long as they're home by their curfew time, then it should be fine. And they can get some alone time in New York City.
So they're going to get one, half day in New York City to find a single person.
They plan for a full day, morning to night.
Good luck.
They want to find something that replicates what a cult can provide. So this is their criteria. Something that has a group setting, a place that has a group setting. It's like where she can take orders, some place that provides meals, because she wouldn't know how to do any of that.
Danielle, I've got it.
Yes.
An improv club. Like an improv. No. They're going to go find the UCB theater in New York. It has group setting. She takes orders from the audience. It's an improv.
No,
looking for an improv
that would be 100% better. But no, they decided to go with the obvious solution of a soup kitchen, Sam. Jeez.
There aren't a lot of those either. No.
No, they think there can't possibly be that many of them in New York City.
Tragically. And this is more of an indictment of the way we take care of our least fortunate people in this country. There are probably way too many. They would have better luck at improv club.
They might actually find her.
All right, I'm gonna need a setting. New Jersey, great. I'm gonna need an activity. Kidnapping. Uh-oh.
So they have a copy of the photo from the FBI of Hannah. Obviously, it's an older photo. But they decide to spend the day in New York City and just go to all the soup kitchens. They're planning to hit breakfast, lunch, dinner, and see if they can just hit up all the soup kitchens. And surely they'll probably run into her.
Oh, yeah. Great plan, guys. Geniuses. This whole family's no.
So they're surprised. Once they get to New York, they are surprised by the sheer amount of people in the city.
Yeah. I mean, look, New York has a reputation for a lot of things, good and bad. But one of those things that is very well known is how freaking big it is. It's not the biggest city in the world, but it's definitely pretty big. I
think since they've pretty much never been anywhere outside of the little New Jersey area, it's probably overwhelming to a point where they would not have expected it.
Dum-dums.
So they go through several soup kitchens, obviously having no luck, and the people at the soup kitchens don't really want to help them because, it would be one of their own.
Yeah.
A bunch of kids. Why would they tell them anything? So they finally they accidentally get separated very briefly, and they both end up talking to policemen and trying to find each other, and it's they're immediately directed to each other because they're just across the street from each other. They're just kind of dumb and got lost.
If they can't find each other across the street, how are they going to find Hannah?
I don't know. And so the policemen that they're talking to, they ask her, they're like, well, you should know about her because the FBI and the police said that, everybody in New York will be notified about her. So you should have gotten some kind of
No one's going to do that. Not every beat cop. Okay, everyone, we need an APB for a woman who kidnapped a child 15 years ago or whatever and has since been returned and is no longer a threat. So
yeah, exactly
make sure you tell every single street officer about this immediately. Priority number one.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, we haven't seen that picture. But also, all those cult people become street folks. They, come out of that. They don't have their homes anymore. They're not welcome in their families. They just they point to some.
It's
they're
tragic.
That. Yeah. They just point to some woman that's laying in the street. They're like, that's Hannah. That's just exactly who she is. There's just no way you're ever going to find this woman, and she's had her just rewards. She's not going to live a
I don't know if it's just, life. But at least
no. But that's what the cops are pointing out is you're never going to find her, and she's not living her best life. So let it go and move on.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, they're like, you have a family that loves you. It sounds like this Janie girl has a family that loves her, and what does it matter as long as you guys have good places to live?
Everyone's happy.
Everybody's
fine.
happy. Yeah, that's exactly what the cops tell them, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. They have these
Is this
about
all it
faces.
Takes for them to have their epiphany?
Complete about face. So oh, it's a really good point. Yeah, as long as we have love, we're totally fine. It's okay. Hannah, is not a threat. It doesn't really matter. She's had her justice.
Into Hannah on the way back.
No, they don't, Sam. That's really the end of the story.
They just had that conversation.
Yeah, they're like,
oh,
we both have families that love us. What else matters? We're in a good place.
The end of a book that did not at all justify its emotional payoff.
That's okay. The third one's crazy.
I hope we get prom in the third one because that'd be great.
No. Well, maybe.
What do you mean? What? The whole point is ask her to prom. Prom's got to be featured into
it skips ahead a little bit.
All right. Well, I am angry at every adult in this book for being terrible. I am amused by Janie, and Reeve's relationship continue to be entirely irrelevant. And I think the book ends in the least climactic way possible.
I know. When I got to the ending, because there's a little chunk at the end that's like, preview what's next, and the girl on the radio, or whatever, the voice on the radio, or whatever the next book is called. And I didn't realize how much of the end of the book that was. And so I got to the end of this section, and I was like, thought there was more book, because I was only at like 92%. And I got to the next part, and I was like, wait, that's the end of the book? That's so
A lot of back matter, yeah. No, it seems like these books are 90% like drama and angst. Generally, you have, a rising action, a climax, and resolution in terms of your basic plot structure. It seems like there's maybe half to a third of the actual plot structure. Like, they have the rising action, the tension. There's really no climax or resolution.
Maybe it's in the last half of the book, Sam. It's like a really long arc.
Yeah, maybe like the entire, maybe there's an arc across all 5 whatever books, and we're only getting right now we're still in the rising action or something.
You're gonna find out. This is like parts of Hyperion where I'm just like, what is going on and who cares?
But at least that, like, Dan Simmons in that book has some weird,
I can't guarantee there's any payoff on this. Yeah. I haven't read these in quite a while. So sorry.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know that Hyperion has payoff. I just feel like I trust Dan Simmons. He's the kind of author who's making this intricate plan that's going to pay off in some weird, complicated way that is nonsense. I don't believe Carolyn B. Cooney is writing some weird, convoluted story. I think she just writes for the drama and then sees where it takes her. Which is fine. Clearly they're fun. I'm not a published author. I have no room to comment on any of this.
Yeah, she probably had quite a lot of money, too, because she's done a lot of series.
Right, yeah. I'm sure Carolyn B. Cooney cares not what I think of her work, and nor should she.
Good times, man.
Oh, that was somehow, like, more happened in this book, so that was nice. There was, like, this book felt like it had more plot, but at the same time, it felt really a lot dumber in terms of all the characters were much, like, more terrible in terms of their decision making. Which was, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the concept of the first book, Face on the Milk Carton, was like crazier, but the actual characters in this book were much crazier than
right. Like the situation, I was really. This is why I was so upset at the end of the last book. I'm like, I thought the really interesting part of this book would not be if she finds these parents, but like how they navigate the reintroduction of her into this family and like the emotional.
Apparently terribly.
Well, that was what I'm getting at. Like, that's like a really interesting situation where you have like a lot of awkwardness and a lot of like, well, we have to think about how we're going to approach this and have a lot of, contemplative thought. No, none of that. It was just full on ditch your other family, just living with us now, cut them off, and we're going to treat you like terribly that you're not until instantly like integrated into our family. None of that happened. So I'm even more upset that the payoff I was hoping for from, her integrating with her family was starting to do such a terrible experience.
I should mention, because I don't think I did, is that I think the plan moving forward is like Stephen mentions he wants to go visit her during the summer, and Jodie's like, oh, maybe we could do XYZ. So it sounds much more organic, which I think is probably a good actual step forward.
They're actually doing like a little bit of like, okay, we'll visit, we'll do this slowly, we'll get to know each other.
Which they should have done in the first place.
Yes.
Like, she literally just gets dropped into their family and is like, here you are, nice to meet you, now you're living here. It's like wild.
Yeah, maybe I'm weird, but I just find like that whole integration to be the interesting part. Like the whole like, what are you going to do with this novel situation, not the like drama of everything.
Yes, well, that's why this entire series, Sam. Then you can live in each moment in a book.
Great. Well, there's a look into my psychology preferences for books. Nobody cares. So we're going to move on. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing whatever happened to Baby Jane or whatever this book is called.
A totally different story. Whatever happened to Jenny?
Janie.
I'm
sorry. Completely different title.
What happened to Janie? Whatever happened to Janie? I don't know anymore.
You don't even know. I hope no one gets kidnapped. But like, if this situation does arise, I hope you treat your erstwhile kidnapped child better than these people treat Janie.
Yeah, just insane, man. And it's clear in the story that they love her, but the decisions they make are just so questionable.
And I get that they love her, but they don't know her. They're still a stranger to you, a person you have to like get to know. You can't just cold turkey it.
There was just such an easier way to do that.
Oh, yes. Anyway, if you want to support Danielle and Mai's new program to reintegrate wayward children with their families, which is totally not, it's just totally not a front for us to skim money off the top. You can contact us at bookretorts.com.
If you want to see if we can find a random person in New York, just give us like a detail. We'll see if we can find them.
Danielle, I guarantee we cannot.
Can't be any worse than they do. Maybe we'll find some, nice policeman or some other person to just give us the facts of life, and then I'll have a complete turnaround and walk away. It'll be fine.
I can barely find the people I know in New York. How can I find people I don't know?
Maybe it'd be easier. Have you tried?
Good point, I guess. Anyways, yeah, send that description to us at bookretorts.com.
You can also tweet, Instagram, or Facebook us at bookretorts.
And if you want to fund our new private investigation squad dedicated solely to finding Hannah, you can do so at patreon.com/bookretorts.
Patreon!
All right, well, until next time, I guess we'll see if there's any prom. The big question, the real important question about Janie's story is there prom in her future?
I don't think there is, Sam. I'm sorry.
Well, then what's the point? Well, we can all find it together next time, but until then, bye.
Take care, everybody. Lovely.
Just like me.
Yes, you're lovely, Sam. You're so lovely.
How's that song go?
You are so lovely to me. But not.
Thanks. Ooh, ouch.
The line is, you are so beautiful, Sam.
I know, but I think lovely is lovely.
It is.
I was also thinking of like, wouldn't it be lovely? It's a whole different song, though.
Chocolates for me to eat. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
If I were as Torpedo, wouldn't it be lovely? I know that one.
I know you do.
Almost that whole song, actually. I sang it once for something.
There it is.
Nay. Also, I like the musical.